Now we can return back to the Schumpeter, and actually we should mention, well, in the previous part we have mentioned trends, but now, uh, even though, as I said, I won't show you the full argument of the breakdown of the system, I would like to mention the Schumpeterian idea on the problems of the capitalist system. Basically, one problem is need for expansion. The system continuously needs to expand and grow, basically. Even zero growth is something the capitalist system has problem with. But the expansion has limits, basically, environmental limits, certainly. Um, but also socially, I mean, after a certain point, that expansion might not bring that much benefit, even if we had limitless resources. So this was one problem, and the second problem is capitalist system creates a rising inequality. Actually, this is a question within the whether this is inevitable or not. But the main idea is if people are putting wealth as barriers to reaching certain level positions in society, basically those barriers will become increasingly more effective. As a result, the inequality level in the capitalist system is tend to rise to very large levels. Um, and as time passes, more companies go bankrupt. There will be more, and the existing companies will centralize, which will actually increase the top wealth levels, while at the bottom, people should still survive, but people will be there will be always a segment which is very close to become well almost, or in some cases not able to being full part of the social life, basically, uh, which means, I mean, their income is not enough to participate in the major activities of the society, and in some cases they might even not be able to basically find permanent jobs, basically. Basically, but capitalism system needs this segment. That segment is um, produced repeatedly by the capitalist system, according to Schumpeter. And then, as system develops, the investment opportunities will decrease. So the possibility of person of a agent who has who has a relatively low wealth level to use the opportunity to basically grow its business uh, fast enough to reach to the big business levels. Those opportunities increasing and decreasing in the capitalist system. And then capitalist system lacks a protective class. I mean, in a feudal system, at least we had aristocracy, which claims to work for the whole system for the good of for the benefit of everyone. Capitalist system doesn't have this kind of a class. Businessmen are told to benefit in whole society, but also it's also according to the main view, the liberalism, the ideology of the capitalism. They don't intend being so, and they should not intend being so. They should be actually selfish, but being so, they will benefit the society. So there is no class which is basic intentions benefiting the whole society. Well, to all of these critiques, of course, there are some answers. For example, uh, one answer to decreasing investment opportunities is always, I mean, the disruptive part of the capitalism, the crisis periods creates these opportunities anew. Whether they create anew or whether even when you have crisis, I mean, these opportunities can, even though each new crisis creates these opportunities, whether these new opportunities created per crisis is decreasing, that's a question. And is inequality created and increased by the dynamics of the system is a question again, or whether the system always have paths, for the people to overcome the inequality, and whether those paths always remain sufficiently open. If the available paths are decreasing in time, that's also a question. Today we might have paths, but those number of paths might be less than the ones available in the beginning of 20th century. But if if this possibility remains equally strong throughout the years, then the system itself might not be creating inequality. On the other hand, maybe the system is not creating inequality, but some interventions of the systems might be creating inequality. That's another argument. Although it is also argued that intervention to the system created by the government might also be part of the very competition process in the capitalist system anyway. When companies get sufficiently powerful, they would naturally try to affect government and use it as a tool of competition. And needs for limits of expansion we have discussed. Maybe. Well, of course, the question is whether more of goods always benefit the people, and also whether it is at some point that could be whether whenever we need it, we will always have some technological developments which will decrease our material and energy use, so that expansion can continue. And to what extent we need this expansion is also, of course, part of the question. So those are the discussions on the problems of the existing system. Because when we are looking to the existing system, we also look in a way whether our existing, when we are looking to the future, basically, the first question is, what are the limits of our system? Can it continue, or does it need a transformation, kind of reform like a transplantation, or maybe it will necessarily collapse and a new system needs to be created? Well, we have Keynesian welfare state, which was a past option. It's, of course, certain aspects of it is still continuing. Welfare state is providing a minimum life standards to the workers, as well as Keynesian type of system has certain protections and in the system and regulations in the economic system. And then there is a neoliberal regime where mainly the particular agents interact with each other freely, without regulation and without regulation protection or protection. And basically, the state only takes part here as an agent which enforces the contracts that are made. Can this type of regime exist in the perfect sense, and whether it will deliver the best possible results? Well, for example, whether the state can be really just between the relatively more powerful agents and less powerful agents, and even whether this type of regime can decrease the inequality is a question. Of course, the neoliberal era creates more inequality, but also the question becomes whether this inequality is healthy, is really created by the people who are is actually giving more return, created by the fact that the more productive people are getting more returns. Well, in case of Keynesian welfare state, of course, the question will become whether this kind of a system within the economy, within the capitalism is sustainable, since at a certain point state debts has increased even in the United States, which will make it difficult to sustain that system, even though state debt has continued to increase in the neoliberal era. And much of that money was spent for the agents of protection, army and police force, basically. And then there is Soviet socialism. It is well, largely most of the socialist countries have been broken down in the 1990s. Although, well, to some extent, China is actually containing a model which some people think that which is a compromise between socialism and capitalism. Some people think it's a pure capitalism, basically. This type of socialism is actually where the kind of elite group of people are leading labor class and basically controlling the economy, leading the economic system in the name of the workers. Of course, what Marx has told us socialism was, where the workers, and at that time workers will become, according to him, workers were to become the majority of the population. So, in a way, in a democratic sense, the society by itself was governing the means of production. So, even though it is broken, I mean, what does the socialist system, which is actually led by maybe a corrupt, imperfect group of people working in the name of creating maximum benefit to the population, I mean, leading the economic system or regulating the economic system to create maximum benefit of the population. What kind of the results this system has created? It's an important question to ask. I mean, whether there are certain things to take from it is at least a relevant question. And whether other versions of socialism are possible and they should be considered is another, of course, question we should ask. Now, challenges for the future. One question is, we have already told how the increased interaction between the people of a country have created great nation states. Are we now in the new type of a phase where increased interaction between the agents of different countries, different states, now may create a global community, which may increasingly feel itself as part of a single society? So, in a way, are we getting a new phase which creates a new type of step in the human history? And that history, I mean, that step is called, in one of the readings you have, planetary civilization, I mean, which is just a step after the nation states, basically. And you have before nation states, also some other previous steps. Whether we are getting to there, or whether still there are obstacles in front of the planetary civilization, it is valid. It's a question valid to ask, and especially the reactions in the world, which are increasingly aiming regionalism and even against regionalism in many cases. In case of England, for example, England's drive to get out of Europe. What do they tell us? Are they just temporary steps against the current, or are maybe we are getting a point where the importance of nation states states become more and more visible? Maybe globalization has gone too fast and we are actually getting a backward. We are actually need a backward movement first. Well, there are questions again. These are again some questions on the future. Well, limits of growth, whether they will show themselves and whether these limits will actually create some actual problems in the world. One problem is might be, I mean, again, natural disasters can be a problem, but also basically the economic system increasingly creating no progress, but actually just making people to work more and more for no additional benefit, might itself be a problem which might intensify in the future. And then question of global leadership is another question. I mean, the United States as seen as the current leader of the world, I mean, to what extent it can continue this leadership, and to what extent another country might take this leadership, or whether we might have a leaderless world where all countries cooperate with each other is another question.